Welcome to Sports and Rants, the hottest sports radio show in America.
Sports. Rants. Brett. Pants. Sports. Rants. Brett. Pants.
Welcoming your hosts, Brett and Pants.
And good afternoon. This is Sports and Rants with Brett and Pants. I'm your host, Brett Sucha, along with my co-host, Glenn Pantalone. And Glenn, we have a special guest in our studio today.
Real life Rocky.
Former Hawk, Vince Papale.
Yes,
How are you doing?
Great. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. It's so cool to be on campus. I remember those days when we had snow all over the place, and we'd be sliding down the hills on the cafeteria trays. We'd sneak them out and slide down the great hills we have here. Good to be on Hawk Hill with you guys.
It's a cold one out today.
Yeah,
thanks for making the trek out
here. Hey, that's okay. I'd play today if I had to. I'd probably have bare arms too.
So what has changed since your comeback here?
Well, right here, sitting in a radio station, and in a studio is one change. Just all the buildings, right where we are here in the Perch, was student housing and Campion Center, where now you have all your vendors and you have the Raptor Hawk Wrap and Subway and all that. Back when when I was growing up, a Subway was something you rode under Broad Street, and you had that. So Campion Center was our cafeteria. Science Building wasn't here. These two buildings that you have housing right around here, these were fields. Of course, Hawk Center wasn't there. I guess now the student, I don't know what you call the building on Overbrook. That used to be the Food Marketing Center. That was built when I was a junior here, right around 70. And let's see, Bellarmine Building was here, Barberlin was here, the library was here. Just a lot of changes, and of course, we didn't have the Marion side, Lower Marion side. Episcopal was there, but all the housing over there, that was mostly for the brothers and whomever.
Did you live in the building that we're in now?
No, I did not. Actually, I was a commuter.
Oh, okay.
That is, my mother was very sick when I was here. I lived in Glen Olden, went to Interboro High School, and I just want to be home and close to my dad. My mom, the whole time when I was here. So it was tough. It was a tough commute, especially when I used to take the bus, and I would take the trolley into 69th Street and then take the E-bus here to 54th Street. It was a killer. But, hey, it was great experience. We were all men back then. Jack Ramsey was our basketball coach. We were ranked number 1 in the country at one point. And then Jack McKinney came in. Jimmy Lynam, some great names. Billy DeAngelis, my good buddy. Some tremendous names, Tom Ford, Marty, Cliff Anderson, just legendary names here at St. Joseph's when I was here. And we were very small. Everybody knew each other, and just had a couple of majors, and I was a business major, I think. So at first I thought I had majored in athletics, but I learned real quickly after I screwed up in the classroom that maybe you better pay attention in the classroom and go to classes instead of play basketball over at the field house now, which of course is Hagan Arena, and all that. So it's changed, and it's changed for the best, and just so proud of being a Hawk. And every time I come on campus, if you can't tell, it's pretty cool.
So could you tell us a little bit of why you came to St. Joe's, why you picked here? Because you came on a track and field scholarship.
Yeah, great. It's a great story. It's actually what I call one of my invincible moments. It was a time in my life when I was at Interboro High School, and I was a pole vaulter, and my coach, George Corner, was auditioning me all around to different schools because all of a sudden I went from a nobody to somebody who was a district champion state finalist. And I auditioned at Temple, all the Big Five schools I went to, except for Penn. I wasn't smart enough for Penn. And I auditioned for those schools, and they said that I didn't make the grade, that I wasn't good enough. And on one track meet, actually, and I had no intentions of coming to St. Joe's. We didn't know much about it, other than the great a great basketball tradition. And Jimmy Lynam at that time was playing. And on this one meet at LaSalle, I'll never forget, I beat all the guys that got scholarships before me at Temple, at Villanova, and also at LaSalle. And they all came running up to me with scholarships, and I said, well, I wasn't good enough back then. I don't know how good I am for you now. And then this great guy, Luna Castro, the track coach at that time, came walking up on Father's Day, and my dad was there, and I just vaulted about 1.5 feet off the world's record. I did a personal best by almost 18 inches that day, and this guy offered me a scholarship to St. Joe's, and I looked at my dad, and he looked at me. We hugged each other, we cried, and I said, "Happy Father's Day, Dad. We're going to St. Joe's," and that's how it happened. And I look back and I smile and think about what a great decision it was for me to be here. I'm just so, as I said, I'm so proud to be a Hawk.
All right, I have a pop quiz for you.
Okay.
You ready?
All right.
Who holds the pole vaulting record here at St. Joe's?
Jim Cannon.
Is it really? I thought it was you.
No, I hold the indoor record, but he got me on the outdoor as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what happened is when I got here, they started, they said, hey, the guy can triple jump, so I became a triple jumper. And then, he can long jumps. And then, we can high hurdle. We can sprint. So actually, I was, every dual meet that we had here, I did 5 or 6 events. And we were allowed to do that, and Jim got me by an inch. So he has the outdoor. But hey, good buddy. It's not about records. It's about It's about a good time, and Jim is a good friend of mine and a great teammate.
So you graduated in '68. What'd you do for fun besides, roughing around the field here?
Around here?
Yeah, what'd you do on the weekends?
Well, weekends, either going to the basketball games, going to the Palestra, either coming back here, not being on campus. I spent weekends at home because I had a bunch of guys, Joe Ward, John Simon. These are guys wound up in the Air Force and served our country during Vietnam. They were pilots. And, we had our fair share of Hawk brothers that were in the Glen Olden area where I grew up, and we all hung out together. We went to the games, go to the Sixers games, big Flyers fans. Of course, I was a huge Eagles fan, season ticket holder for the Eagles when I was a junior at Hawk Hill here. That's when the Eagles were playing at Franklin Field, and I started playing in those rough touch leagues right around that time, unbeknownst to my coach, Kevin Quinn, who he sort of wanted me to focus on track and field. So I had one thing I didn't do much. I didn't study. I found out that was pretty important later on when I got into graduate school. But we had our fair share, and I never regretted not living on campus. And we had a bunch of guys around the neighborhood, and another guy is I'll think of him, but we commuted with him, and he's now a big deal in the NBA. But the name right now is escaping me, but it'll come to me.
Now, did you play high school football or any organized football before you did the rough touch here?
Yeah, I did. What John Nash was, by the way, lived in Upper Darby. So yeah, so of course, he's about half big in the NBA. Did I play rough touch? I was playing rough touch a little bit, here for St. Joe's. I played on the rough touch football game because we used to play against LaSalle, Temple, Villanova, some of the other schools in the neighborhood. And I played rough touch for Cannon's Cafe, Deacon Ale House, and a whole bunch of teams outside of the Philadelphia area when I was teaching school at Interboro. And I was head track coach and assistant football coach there. That was my alma mater from high school. So after graduating from here, I actually thought I was going to go to Vietnam. And because it was '68, the Vietnam War was pretty hot and heavy, and I was primed and ready to go. And I actually was about ready to either enlist in the Air Force or the Marines and become part of what they call Special Services, not Special Forces. And I would have been on their football team and their track team. But from the organized football point of view that you had asked, Brett, I just played 1 year. My senior year in high school, and I was about 5'6", 155, 160 pounds. When I was 14 years old, I wasn't even 100 pounds, wasn't even 5 feet tall. Now, when I got to St. Joe's, and by the time I'm a junior or sophomore, I'm 6'2", 175, $180. Can run like the wind. They made a song about it. And so I ran like I could run and I could vault, and but the organized football thing never really came back to me again until I got an opportunity when I was 28 years old and still teaching at Interboro, working my master's degree at St. Joe's in counseling. And I had a shot at the World Football League. I just took a run at it. I was playing semi-pro football too. I did that for 1 year. But it was those rough touch leagues that sort of sharpened my elbows and just sort of kept me competitive. And once my track goals were dashed because I wanted to try to qualify for the Olympic trials for the decathlon, which I did do, but my score wasn't sanctioned, so I couldn't get into the trials. I got pissed off and started playing semi-pro football, which led to the World Football League, which eventually led to the NFL. So, when one door slams in your face, another one opens up.
How long did the World Football League last for you?
A year and a half, a full year. And then we were going into the second year, and then the second year it folded. And that's the time, because it was a spring league. That's the time where I had I had a leave of absence from Interborough High School, and I was actually going to go back and get my teaching job. And I said, this thing's coming up with the Eagles. And because I had a job coming back in the fall, back teaching again, I was going to resume my master's degree. So Vermeil came in town in '76, and I'll take a run at this, and as they say, the rest is history. And that's literally the month or the 3 or 4 month period chapter in my life that they made the movie about. That I'm really excited about with my man Mark Wahlberg.
So you were teaching in between playing football.
Yeah.
That's something else.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I came into class all banged up, and then I was trying to, as I said, I was coaching. I was trying to qualify for the Olympic decathlon, and I was a pretty different teacher. I was the kind of guy who taught business. My room was right outside the cafeteria. I always had music on in the classroom. The kids used to love it, and I love the kids, and it's all about giving back to them. So that was my first love, and I still love it. So I get involved with kids right now, and I'm coaching it, where my son goes at Bishop Eustace. But, that's what I was doing. That's what you do, and, it just turned out all right.
The movie Invincible showed you working at a bar. Did you also do that?
Yeah, I did that. That's a great question, Glenn, because, they sort of mess around a little bit with the timing, and the way the film was structured, you would have thought that's what I was doing, as my full-time vocation. And not that being a bartender is a pretty cool thing. Make a lot of money and meet a lot of women back then, I'll tell you that. But, I was also as a substitute teacher, but that was that time when I had that leave of absence, when the Philadelphia Bell had folded and the tryout for the Philadelphia Eagles had come about. And so that was pretty much sustaining me. All of a sudden, I was making a couple bucks playing in professional football. I got myself insanely in debt. And way out of my means, because I never really had any money in my hands, and all of a sudden I've got cash, and I was stupid, and so I had bills to pay. So I was working I was working 3 jobs. One was a bouncer at Fran O'Brien's right down the street, which is now where the Sixers are. What PCOP.
Yeah.
And so right there in that one glass building across from Saks. Used to be one of the hottest nightclubs in Philadelphia called Fran O'Brien's. Anybody that's listening that's over 35, 40 right now, they know what I'm talking about. And I was a doorman there. And that's where I met the guy number 53 in the movie, who in the beginning of the movie turned out to be my adversary, but throughout was my advocate, and now he's a best friend, my best friend, and my children's godfather. He'll kill me if I say grandchildren. Yeah, godfather, my man Denny Frank. So good times, man. Right here on Hawk Hill, and you did what you had to do, but then the tryout came, and that just changed my life, and then again with the movie. Sometimes when they make movies about you guys, Hollywood's going to take their liberties. In this case, the liberty they took is they compressed the 3 months after the tryout to when I was going to go to training camp at Widener. They compressed that to 3 days. So within that 3 month period, I had to sustain myself. So rather than substitute teach, I basically was just a bouncer, and all the other time, I was working out and training. And getting my body ready for the NFL, because I wasn't quite sure what to expect.
How'd your body change from when you started going to St. Joe's, from the time before tryouts to prepare you for it?
Well, I put a few more pounds on. I was always running here at St. Joe's, and then I was always running when I was coaching. But when I started training for the NFL, I had to start lifting. So I put about, in a matter of 3 months, without any help from any supplements, I put about 10 pounds on. And it was solid muscle. But more than anything, because I could always run, I was always in great cardiovascular shape. But I had to stretch. I had to get my body ready for the travails of getting banged around all day. So there was a guy by the name of Gus Hoffling, who was a fitness guru back then, and he trained Mike Schmidt, he trained Steve Carlton, and they were his guys, and he sort of took a liking to me, and he was a mentor in that respect to me, and he took me under his wing, and he just killed me which I really needed, and he got me fully stretched out and ready for a lot of the hits and what I was going to endure when I went through training camp and the double sessions, and. But nothing, when you get there, nothing could possibly prepare you for that, from a physical, mental, emotional point of view. The movie sort of catches a little bit of it, can't capture it all. It's like a book. The movie just doesn't capture the drama of the book, like Lone Survivor. This is one of my second favorite movie, of course, now. And Miracle's number 3. I think Invisible was number 1. But Lone Survivor, if you read the book, and you know what Marcus went through, and he talks about each one of those characters, it's so intense. And it's the same thing with our movie, and I have a book out that sort of tells the whole story. It's called Invincible, and but it was tough. But hey, look, it was rewarding in the end because. Man, I'm sitting here talking to you guys, so it's all good.
So, where do you think your competitiveness came from? You seem to always be striving for that goal. So, where do you think that came from?
Well, probably, Brett, from growing up, because I was so tiny, and I grew up in a housing project, and all our fathers worked on the river. My dad worked at Westinghouse. There was Sunship, Scott Paper, whatever it was on the river. The Boeing. And we grew up in this little project in Glen Olden. It's called Glendale Homes, but we call it the project. And we were all the same age. We all went to the same school, but I was the tiniest of them all. But I was always the fastest, and I just basically had to compete to just because of my size, and in order to be accepted out there. Every day you're out there always having to prove yourself, and I think that helped. And then, people piss me off when they tell me that I can't do something, and I feel in my own heart and my will that I can do that. And that's, of course, one of the biggest messages I have when I go out and talk to kids, that you can do it. It can be done. So, they're pretty big motivators. And my mom and dad were great athletes. My mom was a professional baseball player back in the 30s, and my dad was a great baseball, football player, track guy, when he was younger. But they never got beyond the 8th grade. Because of the Great Depression, and so there's all those things were given to me, but I think it was mostly instilled when I was a little kid.
You mentioned how the training camp was like a physical and emotional toll that it took on you. Is that one of Dick Vermeil's ways of coaching and practicing? Well, it's a little tough now with today's CBA.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He said he couldn't coach under today's CBA. I guess why I would liken it. It's like in the service. One of the things that I've never been there, but I've read and I've talked to many, and I'm going to have the honor, by the way, of going to be in a SEAL camp in a couple of weeks in San Diego. And one of the things they do, they strip down the individual, and because he's always looking for this team thing. And when Coach first came in, he wasn't happy with this team concept, which always had the word I within it. And he had recognized that. So, his thing was when he first came in, he just wanted to, basically, if he had 50 guys, he wanted to see who the last 5 guys were standing. And, with me, physically, the challenge wasn't all that great. But when you couple it with all the other stuff and some of the bullying I took from, the draft picks and guys that had been around there for a couple of years, they felt enlightened, that they were there and they deserved to be there. And not understanding that, it's a real privilege, not a right to play in the NFL or to do anything worthy. And so and then just the fact that I had to learn a whole new jargon, and a whole new language, and you're constantly being evaluated. A tough situation, but what helped a lot was I had nothing to lose. If I don't make it, I'm going to give everything I have. I'll go back and I'll teach and I'll coach.
Were you already in a tough situation that you were like, oh, well, it wasn't matter if I go into another tough situation? Because in the movie it showed that you lost your wife, you got fired from the job as well. So that was a tough situation. Does that tough situation make you want to try out? And
well, yeah, that was part of it. Again, liberties being taken by Hollywood, with my wife having walked out on me and leaving me a note that you'll never go anywhere, you'll never make a name for yourself, you'll never make any money. That was true. But it didn't happen right then before that training camp. But that was a driving factor that kept me going with the decathlon. Because when she dropped that note on me, it was when I was coaching in Interborough, working on my master's, and also training for the decathlon at the same time. And so that was, I don't care what's decathlon, whatever it is, the NFL, it was dropped on me. So that was a motivating factor, and that kept me driving. So, and then of course when I made when I got a chance to have that tryout, there it was that that drive was still there, and that hunger was still there. But again, going back to the training camp thing is, it was just a softening factor. It was just right around the corner from where I grew up, and my dad was always there because he was always on strike at Westinghouse, and a lot of kids that I taught at Interborough, a bunch of the guys that I coached rough touch football, I played rough touch with, guys I coached, they were all there and cheering me on. They'd come for practices, and then all of a sudden it was like the legend began. And little did I know that when Dick Vermeil, as he told me a couple of years ago, he said, as soon as I saw you had the team made. I said, you kidding me? I said, you made me go through all that? And he said, he said, all I needed to see was if you could pick up the offense and catch a pass, because I needed a special team wide receiver. And he said, I was going to use you as the example. And he said, you surprised me. I wound up leading the team in receptions. And I said, well, why did you tell me earlier? He says, well, every day you fought and you battled. And he said, you brought guys down off their pedestal. And he said it was just fun to watch. He said, but in my mind, you had made that team the minute I saw you, which was pretty cool.
So in the movie, it shows that the bullying, as you talked about, by the other players in training camp and such. How do you think that drove you to reach your goal? And did you notice a change in the locker room when you made that team?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really believe that I helped change the culture of that locker room, because especially with the wide receivers and some others, because they didn't block downfield. And they would just go, and if it was a running play, they would just come off the line of scrimmage. Well, I never coached that way, and I don't coach that way now. You got to play every play out 115%. You just can't jog, especially if it's a running play, because the defensive back's going to pick that up. And I used to watch that when I was sitting in the stands saying, look at this guy. I mean, if I'm a defensive back, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm going to see him jog off the line. So first thing I did, I'm going to start blocking guys. And, when I got in the World Football League, and then I had a reputation of being a headhunter. And that headhunter reputation eventually got me into the special teams, but it prepared me for that. But I didn't take a play off. I didn't care. If that play was to the left-hand side, I was wiping out my cornerback right in front of me. This guy Sherman, he would not have played against me, because this guy, I'd have taken him out in the first three plays, because we were allowed to block low. And they're not going to get up and talk all that trash and do all that kind of stuff, because I'd have taken him out in the first series and would have neutralized him. He could talk all he wants, but might just come back to him, just stay out of my way, man. I'm going to clock you. And that's the way you played the game. So with me in training camp, I just kept my mouth shut. Guys thought they could get away with stuff, and as my buddies would tell me, but when I made the team and I made that big hit that you see at the end of the movie, I'm invited to my first team party, and the next year I'm voted captain of the team unanimously by the guys that were bullying me and riding me.
You're talking about these big hits, and in today's NFL, that we hear a lot about concussions. Do you feel like any of your former teammates got affected by any concussions that were not properly evaluated, or? I
don't remember. I don't know.
Right.
You got that right. Okay. I'm sure. Back then, you had the old, what's your name? How many fingers? And who you playing? Kind of routine. A ding back then, or you got your bell rung. I'm sure that many.
Still breathing.
Yeah, basically,
none of that Hollywood stuff.
But we didn't think anything of it, and it wasn't a macho kind of a thing, for anybody to say that it was. That's just what the accepted risks of the game were, and you got hit. You certainly didn't have the helmet protection. Back then, they were just starting to come out with the air helmet. A lot of fun. I wore a suspension helmet. It was just a leather band that went around my forehead and around my head, and a crown up over the top. It sort of looks like what they put over somebody in an electric chair, for crying out loud. And it was just a helmet on the outside, a shell. And that's the way it was, and we didn't really think much of it. And now, we have it. There was that nearly $780 million lawsuit that now has been overturned by a federal judge here from Philadelphia. Ironically, I'm going to a concussion seminar in New York City Wednesday, where Philadelphia attorney Craig Mitnick, who is one of he's got many guys under his under his minions there as part of this lawsuit. They're going to talk to us more about that and some of the things that we should do and get to testing. I get a headache every once in a while. Hey, we all do. Is it a result? Like you say, we all do. I think I'm fine. Right now I seem to have all my faculties. People think I'm a little bit stupid every once in a while, but what was that question you asked me? So, but We accepted it as the risk, and now the NFL is saying, okay, we've got to change things, and they're lowering the target zone, and now guys are starting to go low, and before you know it, it's going to be like a pitcher. You can only hit above the waist and below the armpit. But what do you do when you're coming as a defensive back like me? I'm coming in like a missile, full speed, and all of a sudden the ball carrier who has the ball, he ducks, and he's going to try to run me over, and my helmet hits his helmet. I can't react that quickly. Away from, next thing you know, 15 yards, boop, out. You get your $20,000-$30,000 fine. You might get kicked out of the game for a defenseless player, for crying out loud. And the things that we did back then and that you can't do now, it's just like that's why a lot of guys yap a lot. So because they can't be neutralized with any physical action out there by the offensive player.
So you're not big on the rule changes that have taken place?
Not at all. Not at all. Not one iota of a percent. No. And I understand it with the kids, and that thing with the safeties. The safety is certainly the most important thing, and it's one of the reasons why I coached my son Vinny all the way up until he's in high school. And I'm still doing a little bit of coaching, but the most important thing is that I was real concerned about his safety, because I had seen some little league coaches that maybe that wasn't the biggest concern. It was all about winning and losing. And to me, it's about having fun, learning fundamentals, and playing a sport, being part of a team. But no, it's just, the rules changes. It's the way it is, and you just got to deal with it. And it's all part of the way things are happening in the world today. There's just things you got to roll with.
One person that you mentioned that also does not like the rules is Dick Vermeil. What did he think of you when he decided that you were going to make the team? Mm-hmm. How did he tell you that you made the team, and
that's a pretty cool.
How did he give
story.
you your acceptance?
Well, that's a pretty good story. I wouldn't say that Dick Vermeil right now isn't one that's not in favor of the rules. I would say that Dick isn't in favor of the CBA, that you're not allowed to have the tough practices that he has. Right. There's actually cameras at the NovaCare Center down there, outside and inside, that the union has. It constantly monitors practice. And he doesn't like the fact that you can't even run in some practices. You have to walk, and that would drive him crazy. So that was the aspect of Vermeil. The way I found out I made the team, I got in the locker room after the final preseason game, and we had 6 preseason games, and I gotten into the locker room. And I got a locker, and the locker had my name on it, and my name was spelled correctly. It was in plastic, so that was a pretty good sign. But there were still about 6 wide receivers there, and I know that he was only going to take 5 wide receivers, and so then right at that time, the Turk, the guy who's the cutter of the team, and his name was Bill Davis, Coach Davis. His son is Billy Davis, the coach for the Eagles. My buddy Billy's my buddy. The new guy, both of them, the father and the son. Bill Davis comes walking up toward me, and I pick up my playbook. I'm thinking I'm going to get cut, and I'm ready to hand it to him, and he looks at me and he starts laughing, and he points to the other guy next to me. It's Don Zimmerman, and he was the incumbent receiver, and Zim got cut. But I didn't know that, it's just, and they bring your playbook. So I'm out on the practice field, and it's on a Monday, I think, and I'm at the vet, and we're going to be playing the Cowboys. And I'm looking around, and I see my season tickets up there where I sat, and I'm thinking, oh my God, if my guys could see me right now, this would be crazy. And then Vermeil comes over to me, Coach Vermeil, I should say, and he comes over to me and he says, he looks and he starts smiling. I think he's going to cut me. I'm thinking, you sadistic son of a gun. And I think he's going to cut me. And he started smiling. He said, congratulations, old man. You're a Philadelphia Eagle. Welcome to the team. And I said, oh, shit, I can't. Are you kidding me? And I just went out of my mind, and I was jumping up and down, and I'd really gone crazy. And the guy said I was stupid too. And I said, I got to make a phone call. And he said, well, you got to have a press conference? I said, no, please, I got to make a phone call. So the stadium was set up. The stadium was set up for baseball at that time, and still, because the Phillies were still playing at the vet. So I ran out, and I just ran. He said, go ahead. So I ran to the pay phone, which was right outside the Phillies locker room, the Phillies dugout, I mean. And there was a pay phone right there. And I go to the pay phone and make a collect call to my dad at Westinghouse. And this guy, the shop steward, picks up Slim. And Slim, I said, hey Slim, it's Vincey. That was my nickname. I said, tell Kingy his little boy's a Philadelphia Eagle. So in the background, all you can hear, Kingy, we did it, Vincey's an Eagle, and then all of a sudden, all of Westinghouse in the background were exploding. And that's how I found out. And then we partied. We went to Max's and we partied for 48 hours. But we couldn't use that because Rudy had it was called a Rudy moment. Because Rudy, when he found out he got accepted at Notre Dame, called his dad. They did basically the same thing, and so we couldn't use it. And it would have been plagiarizing to the max. Howie wouldn't allow it. I fought for it. Brad Gann, who was a screenwriter, whom I'm going to be meeting right after we do this broadcast. He's in town doing Jack Kelly's story. And Brad Gann, and we tried to get it, but they wouldn't buy it. The NFL, Hollywood wouldn't buy it, so they changed the scene so that I'm called into Coach Vermeil's office, and I go and I hand him the playbook, and he pushes it back to me and says, "You might need this for a little bit." And then that next scene where my friend and we drive off to Max's and party. So that's how they had it. That's how they had to change it up.
So, do you think with Coach Vermeil, it was the little things you did that got you on that team, the blocking, the things that the other wide receivers wouldn't do?
Well, the attention to detail, the little things, and I could read a defense. Don't ask me how and why, but I had this God-given ability and aptitude to read a defense. Some people can pick up languages, foreign languages. Some people are good at math. Some could study all they wanted for math, can't go, 1 + 1. I could read a defense, and Vermeil loved it. Coach Vermeil loved it. And in the first preseason game against San Diego, they put me in right toward the end of the game, and they ran 2 defenses where I had to make what's called a sight adjustment. I made the adjustments on the route that was called in the huddle. The quarterback picked it up. I got 2 receptions, bang, bang, just like that, and 2 first downs. And in a nothing game, first preseason game, Dick Vermeil's first coaching game actually, and they looked and said, "Whoa." So here's Vermeil's question is answered. The guy can catch a football, number one, because one of them was a quick slant across the middle, and I ran over to safety after I caught it. And then the second one was a sideline route, little what they call flare out to the sideline, and he said, "What guy can read defenses?" And then boop, boop, they put me in there, and then they saw me battling and knocking guys down, and hey, let's try him in special teams, see what we'll do. And first guy downfield, make a hit, force a fumble. And against the Miami Dolphins, actually, I had 5 catches, 5 knockdown blocks, 3 solo tackles, and 1 forced fumble in the first half.
Third preseason game?
Preseason game.
Okay.
Yeah, and Coach Vermeil put that highlight on the field on to his team the next day to us, and I saw that highlight, and he said, "This guy's going to make the team." Then I started getting a renewed respect from the guys even before the preseason was over. Pretty interesting stuff. It was pretty cool.
Now, people saw Dick Vermeil on the field. What was he like in the locker room? Was he the same demeanor?
Oh, great. He was the coolest guy in the world. Yeah, it was always very intense. It was very difficult for him to turn the switch on and off, so it was always on, and it was burning fiercely. But he was the coolest guy in the world. He was always fair, and the best times were every Thursday. He would invite groups of players to his home, and he cooked dinner for you. He loves his wines, and he liked his Neil Diamond.
Yeah, he has a winery.
Yeah, he has his winery, Vermeil Wines, great wines. I've actually been out there. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
And and he would cook a dinner for us. And the rule was, like for example, the wide receivers are there. We couldn't talk about us as a Philadelphia Eagle. We talked about our lives, and that's how he got to know us. And between the steak and the wine and the music, it was pretty cool. Once you became one of his, you were his forever. And I'm his forever. I'm going to be seeing him. We're going to be meeting him Wednesday night up in New York. Going to do some stuff with him up at the Super Bowl. And he just loves my wife, who's an athlete. Used to be the gymnastics coach at Penn. And we're looking forward to a good time. He's a close friend. I love him dearly. Gave me the opportunity of a lifetime, and I'll never ever be able to repay him for the chance he gave me. You can't even imagine. He's changed my life exponentially, immeasurably. You can't even put it into words.
It's great that you still have that friendship with him. Is there any other players that you played with that you still have that, whether it's Ron Jaworski, Bill Berge, Harold Carmichael? Yeah, all the three of the above. My best friend, Dennis Franks, the guy I mentioned, 53 in the movie. He was my roommate and teammate. I was captain of special teams year 2. He came in captain year 3. He's the godfather of my children. So he's my dearest and most best friend. But Berge I love, Jaws, I see him all the time. I'll be seeing those, Carmichael and guys in the neighborhood. Frankie LeMaster, we hang out a lot, and
we have an alumni, so Joe Pisarcik, and I'm on the alumni board. So, I try to do a lot for kids. We have this Caring for Kids thing with the alumni board, so really involved with that. So, it's a neat fraternity, and I'm going to be a lot of them up at the Super Bowl and, doing stuff for Wounded Warrior amputees, and their flag football teams are really cool.
Talking about your former teammates, do you have any good stories about them in the locker room or any?
Or even training camp when you first bonded with them, I'm sure.
Well, it's like Las Vegas. It's you just sort of leave it there. I'm not gonna get into one of those kind of. They were all good stories, and the things that you see is all part of being part of a great fraternity and everybody sticking together as a team. I guess one funny, where I was pretty stupid. Bergie, we always used to like to play pranks on Bergie, and he had this thing called the tens machine.
Poor Bergie.
Yeah, poor Bubba, right? Poor Bubba. Gave up 4 first-round draft picks for Bubba. I love him too. He's down in Chaz for Bubba's the greatest. I just love him. Anyway, he had a tens machine. Anybody knows what a tens is? It's that portable electric, it fires out electricity, and it was the night before the Cowboys, and we were there, and he was about 2 seats up in front of me, and he's sitting there watching the movie, and I crawled up. He didn't know it, and I knew where the controls were because I was wearing a tens machine, and I jacked it all the way up to 1,000%, and he just about jumped out of his so. It's just little fun things like that. It's all part of. We didn't have hazing. But there was a certain rite of passage that you had to endure coming in there. And as rookies, there were things that you did and you didn't do. And one thing you didn't do, you didn't open your mouth. You kept your mouth shut, and you took what was dished at you, which wasn't too bad. We just leveled out there in the playing field. Once you got off the field, everything was cool. Sing a school song, maybe take somebody's tray, but no big deal.
Is there any one moment on the field that you feel as though got you to like the same level as the veterans?
Where you said I'm an NFL player?
Yeah, I guess that Miami game I just spoken about, and then finally, the Cowboys game was a little disappointing in the movie. They over-embellished it. I actually had vertigo. I was so nervous coming down that runway and on that field, and it was about 120 degrees. The turf stunk. I mean, literally, the odor was horrible. And just seeing all the players and guys that are like icons in sports, and having the Cowboy cheerleaders just a couple of inches from you, that is quite distracting. And I didn't have a really good first play, but I actually gathered myself together and had a pretty decent play. A pretty decent game, but the biggest one was coming back in that second game, the home game, Dick Vermeil's first home game, and our first home game under his coaching, and it was against the Giants, and I had that game, the one that you saw in the movie. That was it. I mean, all those hits. I was a hit-or, and made the big play at the end of the game, which sealed the deal. And that's when I got accepted by the team, and never looked back. But what was going on is right in the beginning, Glenn, the real life Rocky thing, that started to wear thin with a lot of the guys, because Rocky was just starting to come out, and then I was getting a lot of attention, and the team wasn't, and I had to sort of settle it down, and there was a little bit of jealousy maybe by some of the guys, because I was getting this publicity that I really didn't want. And unfortunately with the
Philly
movie,
media.
Yeah, I get. Well, no, these are players.
Oh, okay.
Teammates, and still there's a couple guys that can't get over the fact that the movie was made about me and not them. And I keep saying it's every man's story. It just has my name in it. No big deal.
Wow. So with now players now at the Link, they don't have the luxury of playing at the Vet like you did. Could you tell us how that was?
Well, first of all, the turf was unique. I have some of it. I have the 3 different layers of turf out on my back deck in my house in Cherry Hill, and when my friends come and when they see the first edition of AstroTurf, now it's Field Turf, AstroTurf after the Astrodome, and it was just a pad. It was pretty rough, I never looked at the turf as being other than my Taj Mahal, and I revered it, and I loved it, and I knew every inch of it, and I used to run it all the time during the winter. And weather like this, that never stopped me from running the miles. I would be running the ramps the whole time, and that's what I did if I couldn't run the streets of Philadelphia, which when I was doing that before the movie Rocky came out. So those street running scenes, a lot of it was sort of some of the things that I'd been doing back then. And it was just we always felt comfortable in the vet, and my biggest thrill was when I drive over the Walt Whitman Bridge, because I lived in Jersey at the time, and I look over to the left as I get to the peak of the bridge, and I'd see the vet, and I'd say, "Damn, it's where I work. That's my office." And it was pretty cool, and a tear in my eye when that place went down. There's some great memories there, and I have this amazing video. With my children and me, the day before the last game with the vet, right before they played Tampa in that championship game that they lost, and I took my children throughout all of the vet, and I have this video for them now to see, the memories of the vet, areas that people wouldn't even know, and everybody at the vet allowed me to do that, which was really cool. I have great memories there. Going back to the home opener against the Giants, you mentioned about the play on the special teams that was shown in the movie. In real life, it was called the muff punt, right, while in the movie it was called a fumble. Right. Did you feel you got robbed because it was called the muff punt instead of a fumble? It was a muff. Yeah, I mean, it just brushed him. I made the play. I got him. I touched him, and it just brushed him. In real life, Wikipedia, it was all over me about it. No, that wasn't this and wasn't that, and that they brought the play back. The movie doesn't say it's a touchdown. Do you see anybody at the end of the movie signaling touchdown? No. I guess it was assumed by me, I guess. Well, see, there you go. Well, that's how they can. That's just the conditioning of the mind. Sure. And the same celebration. I didn't. My celebration was a little bit different than what Mark said, but I was surrounded by all my teammates, like it was, running to the sideline. So that was pretty much it. But the events leading up to it, the audible and all that was true, and I use that when I speak. I show that scene. That's the last scene in the movie. And what I do, I do the white knuckle. Yeah, the white knuckle thing. Because Danny Franks would say, "Man, read their knuckles. When you see their kknuckles turn color, get lighter, you can see it. I'm leaning right here." And that's not because it was cold or anything. No, nothing. You just see it. If guy's leaning forward, the knuckle, the skin color changes, and you can read their knuckles very simply. So, that was the case. But when I'm doing speeches, I call it analyze, adapt, and achieve. See what's going on. Hey, knuckles are changing. Adapt, call your audible, and achieve. Knock the snot out of the guy and get the ball. You mentioned having vertigo during the Cowboys game, going out. Can you go more in depth of being there for the last game, like season finale to the year previous, to being there for the first opener of the season? I'm not sure I understand.
As a fan and then playing. Yeah.
Like being in the stands and then now being on the field. Oh, that was insane. You can't even imagine. Just coming out of the tunnel that first time. In Texas, I didn't quite appreciate it because it was Texas Stadium. But when I came out and I ran out of that tunnel for the first time when we were playing against the Giants, I was the first guy out of the tunnel, and I sprinted to the other end of the field, which would have been the third baseline down there for baseball, and pointed up because that's where all my buddies and my dad was up there, and that's where my season tickets were. And I pointed up to them. You can't even imagine what it's like to be there, and then to have guys cheering and rooting for you. It was just totally insane, and it took me a while to sort of understand the fact that I was a Philadelphia Eagle, because that's all I dreamed about being when I was a kid and even when I was coaching and teaching.
So what was it like playing in front of the Philadelphia fans? We love our players here.
Yeah, they're cool. Yeah. I mean,
intense?
Intense, but we expected them to be intense. I was with a guy, I was just down in Orlando speaking, and I was with a guy that had three rings. He kept telling me about his 3 rings that he got in the Super Bowl. I said, "You don't have a movie, dude." But and anyway, and he talked about how tough it was to play in Philadelphia, and how he couldn't take his helmet off because they threw batteries at him. And I said, "Oh, come on, man. I mean, that's such an old story that, and the snowball thing at Jimmy Johnson. Those stories are just so old. They're the you have those knuckleheads and those few that are going to do that. But all in all, we have the best fans and the most loyal fans, and I don't care what the weather and what the record is, they're going to sell out, and they're ours. They feel the pain, And Ray Didinger said it best, the Hall of Fame Ray, right? You see him on Comcast all the time. And Ray and I are friends from way back. He said, I put the pads on, I put the helmet on for the fans. That the legacy that I'm going to leave isn't the legacy that you'll see in the record books. It's a legacy that I was one of them that actually played out there on the field. And I never lost I never lost that fact, and I still don't lose it. I just guys, people come up to me, out of nowhere here, and just like running into Anne-Marie Gotti, my daughter's best friend, and here she sees me walking through campus. I mean, it's so cool. And I was at a viewing last night, and the lady whose mother I was viewing, she said, and she couldn't believe the reaction of people in the funeral home. And she said, is it like, because she's in Las Vegas, she says, is it like this all the time? I said, yeah. She says, does it bother you? I said, no. It's pretty cool. Everybody's nice. So what could be better than that? So, hey, if you're nice to Philly, they'll be nice back to you, unless you're a cowboy.
They're certainly not nuts. Underneath your uniform, you wore Who's Nuts, T-shirt. Mm-hmm. Can you go into how that came about and why you wore that underneath your pads?
Well, Who's Nuts is this mantra, like the Marines have their Semper Fi, or you go hoorah, and all that. And something they're very proud of. We had a guy coach that played in the NFL for many years. He was a center for St. Louis, Kenny Iman, and he was our special teams coach. He was a rookie special teams coach, offensive line coach, and he got hold of the special teams. He didn't know anything about special teams. He just knew how to get us to play hard. We just run downfield and do whatever we had to do. And but he started this thing, and it was sort of reward for making big hits. And it wasn't a bounty by any means. There were bounties out there. One coach I know of that gave away TVs and would give away radios and stuff. No cash. It would be all really nice things if you knock somebody out of commission and put a big hit on somebody. We didn't have the bounties, but we had a T-shirt. And the T-shirt on the front of it's Who's Nuts. If you Google Vince Papale and go to images, you'll see it. And or it's on my website, vincepapale.com, and it's there, and that was our special teams game ball, and you could only get it if you won the game, and you could only get it if you were a special teamer, and I got the first one, and I'm actually a member. I was playing in St. Louis, and this guy jumped over the stands and came running up to the sideline. He gives me this T-shirt, and on it says Who's Nuts International. I was on the Who's Nuts International.
This concludes our podcast of Sports and Rants with Brent and Pan. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at Sports and Rants. Like us on Facebook. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes. And visit our website, www.sportsandrantz.blogspot.com. It would help our rankings on iTunes if you rate and review our podcast. Thanks, and have a good day.